Welcome to Vegan Business Talk with Katrina Fox, author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Vegan Business Talk. I'm Katrina Fox, journalist, media trainer and editor of veganbusinessmedia.com, the multimedia blog providing success tips for vegan business owners and entrepreneurs. In this episode, I interview Seth Tibbott, founder of Turtle Island Foods, which produces the range of renowned Tofurky alternative meat products. This is another audio interview that I did for my book, Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. And it was such a pleasure to interview Seth because he's run a vegan business for over 20 years and Tofurky has seen massive success. But it wasn't always like that. In fact, Seth had some really tough times and it actually took him many, many years before his business turned a profit. And I think it's really important for us to hear about the challenges and struggles that successful vegan entrepreneurs had, because sometimes we might be tempted to think that they had it cushy all the way along or they just got lucky. And that's rarely the case, and Seth's story certainly demonstrates that. So in this interview, Seth talks about the innovative strategy he took with his living arrangements when he couldn't afford conventional rent. I love this, and I think you will too. How Tofurky took off and hit the big time when Seth stopped conforming to how he thought a businessman should look and act. Really important lesson there. The importance of knowing when to fire yourself and delegate, and much more. Here's the interview with Seth Tibbott of Turtle Island Foods. So tell me a bit about the why behind Tofurky. What's your purpose? What's your driver for running the company?
Well, it's all started as I came into the business as an environmental standpoint. I was a teacher naturalist in the Portland schools, and I wanted to raise some money to support environmental groups and education that I was working with. And little did I know that, you don't just open your doors and become profitable enough so that you can support any businesses. But that was in 1980. And, that is still our mission is, to have foods that are, the vegan foods that are affordable and delicious and innovative and that are within reach economically of, the most people in the world, and to foster change. Now I know more than I did when I was starting out about, the connection between vegan diets and environmental destruction. And, we weren't so aware, although I had read a book called Diet for a Small Planet by Frances Moore Lappé, which is an old book in this country. And it was in 1973 that I read it. And she was talking about, why are we feeding all these grains to animals, which are a very inefficient protein machine, when we could be eating them ourselves or feeding them directly to people. So that made a lot of sense to me. So, that's our main mission is to create delicious vegan foods for people's health, the health of the planet, and the health of the animals, farm animals in particular, that are very abused. So those are our three main pillars.
Fantastic. I love that. You touched on creating affordable food, and I think that's a really important point, because I know some of the vegan business owners, and particularly those that are also wanting to run their businesses sustainably, perhaps source organic materials, and they say that can be a bit of a challenge, particularly when they're starting out, is that because they have to raise their prices in order to, either break even or make a bit of a profit. So I'm curious, how did you kind of get over that challenge of, producing the high quality products and still being competitive and attracting people to buy?
Well, it was a very long process. For the first 15 years before Tofurky, I was just making tempeh, and I was making very little money. I was living on $300 a month U.S. And actually, that's when I built my tree house, because I didn't have any money to afford like a rent of a real house. So I rented 3 trees for $25 a month and spent $2,000 building this tree house, which I lived in for 8 years while I was getting going. So we were, very not profitable for until really for the first 15, 20 years of our business. It was a right livelihood, and I was, losing my shirt financially, but living the dream of what I wanted to do. So, the food business is really hard it's all built on volume. You really have to sell a lot of product and make, a nickel or a dime on each product, as opposed to selling a few products and trying to make $1 or something on that. So there's, until we reached a certain, when 1995, which was 20 years ago, when we invented the Tofurky, that's when we started on the road to profitability, and we were able to sell our products all across the country and then up into Canada and Europe and, Australia. And so, in order to create, money to pay everybody's health care and decent living wages and invest the money back in the business too, we had to sell quite a lot. So it was a 20-year struggle before we really became profitable.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important, because sometimes when people see big companies, successful companies like yours, but they often think, oh, well, they must have gone from zero to, success almost overnight. So I think it's really great that you're sharing that there are those struggles in the beginning. So I guess was it when you said it was, you produced the Tofurky, so it was literally the fact that it was an innovative product ahead of its time that kind of kicked you into the profitability. Was that the turning point?
Oh, it really was. And, we were lucky enough. It was such a crazy product for a lot of people that didn't think that anybody would be silly enough to market. They didn't think there was this market, first of all, but here was all these vegetarians and vegans who were left out of, the Christmas and Thanksgiving dinner parties, because it was just like they would have salad and they would have tomatoes. And that's all great. I love salad, I love potatoes, but, to have something like the meat eaters were having this grand feast and everything, and to have a high protein substitute for turkey that sat in the middle of your table, nobody had done that. So we got a lot of free advertising from TV and radio and movie stars and in movies and TV shows and that kind of thing that really popularized the concept. Even though some of them were poking fun at us, it was like, we like to take ourselves not too seriously and have some fun, and our marketing, sort of reflects that, because people like to laugh. We, as a people, I think we're the otters of the universe. We like to have fun, and we like to enjoy life and ourselves, and I think that resonates with people, is just, hey, here's some people that like to have fun. So it was a fun concept, a fun name. And we had contests where, we asked people, what does a Tofurky look like in the wild? What do they look like? And then people were drawing up all their little, this is what they look like in the wild. And we had contests. So we just tried to have fun. And, before that, I really hadn't tried to have fun. Like, I like to have fun. That's just who I am. I'm a fun-loving person. And before Tofurky, I just tried to be something I wasn't. I tried to be this straight businessman, because I thought that's what you're supposed to look like, and we didn't have anything, so we didn't have a lot of humor in our marketing. And then as soon as I started to sort of become more like who I was, really, that really helped. It was like an authentic move. And so Tofurky sort of was an extension of this fun-loving streak of mine, and it happened to work out. Other people had fun with it too.
That's a brilliant message, I think, around that being who you are. Because I think a lot of us, we try and fit into those boxes, when, like you say, when it's business, somehow business is all serious and kind of grown up. I love that you actually got your success through being you. I think that's a wonderful message. Thank you for sharing that. So nowadays, obviously Tofurky was, pioneering in its day. Now, of course, there are, quite a few other products on the market. How do you go about standing apart and sort of maintaining your place in the market now that you've kind of got, I guess, competitors or other people in the marketplace?
That's a great question, and, we tend to look at competitors for the most part as, it's a positive thing because it's sort of the tide that lifts all boats. If you have a category in a store, let's say diapers, and diapers are hot and growing and people are innovating and the category's supercharged, it's easier for you to take your new diaper and get placement on the shelf. And if the category is shrinking and not doing so well, then the space in the store shrinks and you come in with your innovative diaper and people are like, we have enough already. Thank you. We don't need that. So it's really, we try and look at it as opportunity for us and, a positive thing because really, you think of your life. I mean, I don't know if you drink, for instance, beer or wine, but you rarely would buy the same beer or wine all the time or breakfast cereal or whatever. So, it's healthy to have competitors. So we look at it like that, but we, we're different than a lot of people in that, we do have an old story and an authentic story, and we grew very slowly without selling out to big businesses, and that's one of our main things is that we're one of the few family held independent companies in the world, because a lot of these little entrepreneurs have moved on and sold to some of the big guys. So we enjoy being, family held and independent. And also, our ingredient string is a little different. We base everything on what we call traditional soy products like tofu and tempeh that have had a history of being healthy. We don't use the isolates and concentrates and the powders and some of the more intensive non-traditional soy ingredients in our products. So we kind of differ. There's a bunch of different things, but those are two of them. Family held and independent, and then basing it on organic soy that's traditionally processed, not heavily processed and industrialized soy.
Excellent. Got it. So your business went through the the global financial crisis and obviously survived. What did you do from a business perspective, or did it even affect you? Because actually a couple of business I spoke to said it kind of didn't even really affect them, which was kind of interesting. So I'm just curious, did it impact you in a big way? And if so, what did you do to get through that?
I assume you're talking about like 2008.
Yeah, sorry, they call it in America, we call it the GFC or global financial crisis. The big, downturn. Yeah.
It had some effect. What mainly the effect was, it raised, we had a lot of our basic commodity ingredients, like the soya and wheat and canola oil. They skyrocketed in price. So we did have to raise prices then. We had a major price increase. It was a very interesting time. It wasn't, because of that, it wasn't our most profitable year. We still made profit, but we still had some nice growth during that time. But, people said the same thing to me about 1980. They said, "Oh, you were very brave. You started your business during a recession. It was a terrible time for small business." And I was like, I was too stupid to know there was a recession or whatever on there, and I don't know I don't understand global markets, or, things. I do understand, some of the basics, but some of that stuff does just fly over your head, and you're not involved in it. But, you have to stay fleet of foot and make adjustments. Mainly, the main impact was just because our costs went skyrocketing. We had to raise our prices a little bit too. Not as much as we probably should have, but we did raise them. And
got you through. Yeah, for sure. Excellent. That's awesome. So how do you go about, you've now, obviously your company has grown substantially. How do you go about finding and keeping experienced and motivated staff?
First of all, having our plant in Hood River has been a really nice feature, because it's such a beautiful, desirable place to live. Our CFO just came in a couple of years ago from San Diego, and he was working for a far bigger company, which had a far bigger salary. But, the lifestyle that, and our marketing director too, just came here looking for, a more balanced lifestyle. And we try and be really, family friendly and respectful of people's needs, and just also be, we know, I used to do everything. I know how hard it is to work every job. I've had every job here, at one time or another, and I know how hard it is. So when you have that in your heart, it really brings you respect for the people, and you really want to treat people as well as you can, because that's really the first. It's nice. We give a lot of money to different nonprofits and groups that share our ideals, but we also believe that, success begins at home, and just taking care of, the workers and everything. My stepson, Jamie, who's just taking over the company, I'm 63, and so I'm handing him the reins. He's vision is, there's a type of corporation here called a B Corp that is, it measures you as being, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, like socially responsible. Right. How you treat, it's everything on how do you buy from sustainable sources, and how do you treat your employees, how do you treat the community that you work in. There's all these different things. So we're just getting certified as that. And so people, I think it's not always, the top dollar that people want. They want, to feel like they're working for a good cause and a company that they believe in, and also looking for lifestyle changes too.
Yeah, that's really, really important. You mentioned that you did everything, and at one point you were doing everything. Do you have any advice for business owners who can sometimes feel completely overwhelmed? They're so busy kind of working in their business, they don't really have time to work on it and, do that big picture stuff to grow, so they kind of get stuck. Do you have any tips for how to deal with that kind of overwhelm?
That's a great question. Like we grew very differently than most of the startups that I see today. Like I've invested in a vegan cheese company, and I'm watching them go through it. But, from day one, they're paying themselves, some pretty big salaries. They're not even, selling yet, and they're paying these big salaries. And they also, there's quite a few companies over here now that have gone to Silicon Valley and gotten big investments from outside investments, before they even make any money at all. They're in debt up to their eyeballs, and they have a lot of people helping them. It's just a different way of doing business. We're the anomaly over here, having just gone slowly, and with that slow build, it is very stressful. And I think knowing when to fire yourself from jobs is very important. And what I've noticed is that every time I fired myself from, the main job, it gets better. The job gets better, done better, because you have somebody, you're trying to juggle all these balls.
Yeah.
So you're only able to devote a certain amount of attention to it. And then when you hire somebody that all they do is that, and if you hire the right person, then it's really good. So knowing when to fire yourself, I guess, and not being afraid to have your eye on a bigger picture. For a long time, I was paying, my director of sales more money than I was making. And, it'd drive my wife crazy, like a little bit. But, it was looking towards the future, because you knew that, those sales were going to keep going and keep giving back. And so I think that just knowing when to fire, and, as soon as you can find some good people that can work, being fair, and don't be afraid to take less money to build a long-term company, I would say.
Great. It's great advice. On the topic, I suppose you touched on a little bit there around kind of mindset. And I'm guessing a lot of business owners say that owning their own business is the biggest form of personal development, because it forces you to grow as a person. I'm curious, what are the key lessons that you've learned, and perhaps what qualities do you feel that people need to run their own business?
I think most of all, they need to have perseverance, and a sense that they're in it for the long haul. I think that our business worked because it had to work. Like, I didn't have a fallback option. I moved up here an hour and a half from Portland into the middle of the woods with this tempeh business, and I don't know what I would have done if that had collapsed. And I have seen businesses, like a friend of mine started a vegan cheese business like years ago. Before, like right now, vegan cheese is a hot, supercharged category, and it's expanding. But so he was one of the first ones. He had a great product, a great idea, but he was a ex-child like actor on American television. And he had like money coming in from that. And so he would go, oh, yeah, I'm not going to make cheese, right now. So I'm going to go to Japan for a month. I'll make more when I get back. It didn't have to work for him, like somebody has to be like, I'm going to make this work. I'm just totally committed. It's like the commitment and really the perseverance. I mean, I probably should have, most people would say 20 years, like, you're not making money. Maybe, did you ever think of, I don't know, maybe you were doing the wrong thing, but I never really, seriously considered not doing it. I did consider it, but mostly it was, something I guess I believed in, and I'm just stubborn. And I think turning the key every day, and just showing up for work and sticking around until something catches fire. And, that's really all I did was, because we had products before that didn't catch fire, and every time you fail, you learn, it's like, don't be afraid to fail. Failure is probably as good a teacher as success, maybe better,
That's brilliant.
But just having the perseverance to pick the lessons up and pick yourself off the floor and try something else.
Absolutely. That's brilliant advice. Do you have any strategies that you use personally to kind of, I guess, to keep yourself kind of your mental and emotional well-being quite strong? I don't know if you do anything. Obviously, you're around nature, which I'm guessing is probably beautiful. Do you do anything like, I don't know, coaching, personal development, meditation, any kind of strategies that you use that you find, just help you to cope, particularly as the company's grown?
I just think taking time for yourself and your own having hobbies outside, the business, not having the business be your sole point of contact with reality. I mean, I played like frisbee golf. I liked hiking. I liked just traveling. I always tried to mix it up, and just so that you had different points. Like when I built the tree house, that was fun, and it was fun. And then I'd travel around and I'd see other tree houses, and just to have, to be not so narrowed in on, your own little rut that you can't see outside of it. It's important to have, I think, many points of contact, and to be taking care of yourself while you have this baby business that you're growing, and not give all your time to it.
Yeah, very important.
The only difference between a rut and a grave are the dimensions, they say. So you don't want to.
That's a very good point. Seth, for those that people then who are they're in, at the moment they're in employment, they've got their regular job, whether it's 9 to 5, whatever the hours are. What things but they aspire to run their own vegan run business, whether it's servicing the vegan community specifically or the greater community. What are the key things that you think they should take into account before making that leap from employment to employed? To self-employed.
That's a great point. I think really clarifying in your own self, what your goals are financially, and what your goals are, for your life, for your meaning, how much, time you're able to devote to this. But, and is there do you have a strategy of, survival, like through lean years? Do you have savings that you can draw back on? And, it's a leap of faith, any start of a business. And just knowing, I guess knowing what are your skill set, and what's your unfair advantage, that you have over all the other businesses that are maybe starting out, in this area. Like in the beginning, my unfair advantage was I had already made tempeh for years in my home, and so I knew sort of a little bit more, because there were all these other little tempeh shops starting up, and I remember even competing with those. So you always have to have an unfair advantage in, one thing that's different for you than the competition, and then with Tofurky, our unfair advantage was we were the first ones in the market with it, and so there was, other brands that soon came on and tried to duplicate it. But because the story was new for us, like we were first in the market, we had all of this press and brand recognition and names, and that really created an unfair advantage for us. So really being realistic with yourself, and knowing, maybe your unfair advantage is you're a wizard at marketing, and you have a friend at a advertising firm that is willing to work for cheap, or get the word out, or you have a contact to a celebrity that'll, but I think you need to realistically assess what your advantage over the other people that are going to have that same idea, or that are in that field. Like what do you have that they don't have?
Yeah. Perfect. That's great. In terms of the word vegan, we're touching on sort of the last section now, which is kind of around marketing and PR. So in terms of using the word vegan, some people say, oh, well, you shouldn't, if you use the word vegan, it can scare people away. And the other idea is, it's actually very clever niche marketing. Can you tell me what your thoughts are on that, and your choice of how and when you use the word in your marketing materials, and how prominently you use it or not, and why?
It's a great question. And, I've just been studying the history of meat alternatives in the United States, and I came across some articles. there were all these crazy names, even like 100 years ago, that people were trying to, like, how do we describe our food, to people? And I don't, we continue to have that conversation, and we experiment with plant-based and vegan and vegetarian. And, lately we've been using plant-based quite a bit, meat-free, has been thrown out there. So I think we're still having that conversation. I don't know if I have the total answer to that, and it's different in different countries too. I'm not sure how it is in Australia. One of the reasons why I'm going there to find out. But, in Germany right now, I know that, do you know about Vegans, the
Yes.
supermarket chain?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So we're selling there, and I was over there in Berlin in April, and, I met with this vegan activist over there, and he told me that in Germany, obviously in Germany, vegan it's a supercharged category. It's a jet stream right now, and people are all, it seems more like a positive word. It doesn't have as many negative connotations as it does in the US. And the guy was saying that the main reason people are vegans over there is because of their concern for animals. They don't think it's like particularly a healthy diet. Like their sort of attitude is like, well, I'll do this for the animals. I know it's not the best diet for me, and in the United States, it's the opposite. It's like people are like, well, what's it going to do for me? Is it going to make me lose weight or be more attractive or whatever, healthier? And then and the animals too. Yeah, that's a nice little side benefit. But it was interesting how the word vegan seemed to be more accepted as like it was, trendy in Berlin. I mean, Berlin's a fabulous city for the vegans, and I really enjoyed it.
Wow.
Have you been to Europe?
Yeah, I was last in Berlin because I'm from the UK. There? I grew up in London, so I went to Berlin I was back in 1991. It wasn't vegan friendly then, so I'm actually delighted to hear to see how it's progressed, because it's such a big meat eating culture. For breakfast, it's like you go in and there's like just masses and masses of meat that they're eating. So I think it's great that I've heard that it's it's becoming more veganized. It's very interesting. So
you see the word vegan played in Australia.
It's mixed. It's kind of almost like Australia's always a little bit behind the US and the UK, I guess, for that matter, but particularly the US. And obviously, we often kind of pick up on what's happening in the US. So we're still a bit behind. But it's starting to become more popular. Like, because I'm a journalist, so I've written pieces around animal advocacy and veganism, and just the fact that I'm able to even get some of those published, I think shows a little bit of a shift. Obviously, the comments get quite sort of mixed, but I think people are still a little bit scared of it. It's more kind of, I think, plant-based. People are a little less threatened by. We've got a vegetarian butcher here, Susie Spoon's vegetarian butcher, so that's kind of interesting. A word vegetarian is kind of less scary. So we're still in that kind of space here in Australia.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So just on Marty, you mentioned that you've already had, when you first got going, you had a lot of PR, you had a lot of media. What about nowadays? Like, do you actively or proactively seek media coverage as part of your PR and marketing strategy, or are you at a stage now where the press just kind of come to you automatically?
We definitely, as a mature brand that's been around for a while, we don't get as much, press as some of the new, sexier, startups. There's always got to be a news story, and the press, of course, they feed off of like what's the new cutting edge thing, and there's always the stories. We find, whereas before the press more just comes to us, and it still sometimes comes to us, but to really get press now, we really have to be more proactive about hiring, public relations and we work social media a lot because that's an easier way to get sort of attention now, as opposed to, convincing a newspaper to write about you. You can just put it out there and then try and get it to go viral. But
Sure.
it's a story. Right now, we're going in the lead up to Thanksgiving. We're kind of going back in time because this is the 20th year for Tofurky, and Tofurky roast has been such an iconic product in Thanksgiving. I mean, it's still the number one selling, meat alternative at Thanksgiving and for the roasts and everything. But we're going back and to those people that have always for years now, they've said, I've already done that story. Now they're like, oh, that's 20 years. Well, I'll run that again because it's like a flashback. It's like a time machine. So, but it's always hard to, have a different slant or a different hook for the media. We always try and have something. But it's more of a challenge now. In the early days, they'd find us, or it would just show up on TV and you'd go, whoa, we had no idea it was coming out, how nice, until the phone started ringing and they were like, oh, did you know you were just on this show or that show? Something. So everything has its cycle.
Absolutely. You mentioned social media, Seth. Which social media platforms are you most active on and which are most successful for you in brand building or generating sales?
Twitter and Facebook, definitely. We should be doing more with Instagram and Pinterest, but we're just developing those right now. But, like, for instance, Twitter has been a good one. Like on Thanksgiving morning, we used to have people that would come in on Thanksgiving morning and sit by the phone waiting for people to call with their questions about, hey, I didn't thaw the Tofurky roast. How do I cook it now? Or is this still good? Or what, it was like a hotline and you'd get, I don't know, all these calls from people on the phone on Thanksgiving morning, and you'd help them through their crises. Now we don't even do that anymore. It's all Twitter. It's people asking questions on they'll ask the same questions, but they'll just tweet it to you, and you can respond in real time. And it's cool because a lot of them too will post their photos of their Tofurky roast that they had at their house, and they have a lot of pride in it, either on Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah, I did that 2 years ago when I was in LA. That was my first ever Tofurky. I was at my friend Karen Dawn's Thanksgiving.
Karen Dawn, Karen Dawn.
Yeah, I stayed with Karen. It was my first time to LA, and she was lovely. And she had this just amazing, I had heard about this amazing Thanksgiving dinner that she did. So I was so honored to be there. And it was just so lovely because I was taking photos and posting it on Facebook. So, yeah, that's a great way to get it out there. That's fantastic. Fantastic. So my final two questions, Seth, are just in systems. When you mail out, I guess you've got a mailing list that you email to people. Mm-hmm. Do you know what system you use, like Infusionsoft, Ontraport, MailChimp, any of those? I don't know if you know that, if someone else does that for you.
That's a question for Erin. She's just getting revitalized because we've fallen down on that a little bit, and that was one of her jobs that we gave her when she hired. So she's just getting that going. But if you send me an email with that question, I can get that answered.
Oh, cool. Okay. And the other one was just what other technology tools or apps do you find most useful in the course of running your business? Maybe that's another question for Erin.
Yeah, that's probably another question for Erin, because she comes from a big, branding agency background, and she I know is doing this she's doing a Pinterest thing now with all these bloggers where they're going to cook a Tofurky feast and then pin it on Pinterest and do that. So
nice.
It'll be interesting to see how some of her stuff goes, but she's real savvy too.
Fantastic.
Me.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Seth? That's all my questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer them.
It's really thrilling to me to see not just Tofurky, but vegan products in general attaining popularity worldwide. That's one of the areas that I'm working on the most right now is international sales, because it's like what I enjoy. Like I started the business from nothing, and you just have that. That's what fires my engines. So like when you look at a country like Australia where there hasn't been sales and we're going over, and it's like starting over again. It's like starting a new business, and that's what I enjoy, and it's great to see that. So we're doing that. We're selling to Brazil, which I never thought would be a good country, but it's going well there. Iceland, Germany, Europe, UK. Even have a guy that I'm working with in Iran, of all places.
Oh, wow, really? Wow.
That's Tofurky. The Middle East, we have queries from Israel we're following up on, and it's just nice to see that it's not like just North American or a U.S. phenomenon, that it's just people are waking up all over the world and finding that plant-based proteins are a great way to go from so many angles.
So that was Seth Tibbott from Tofurky. You can find out more about Seth and Tofurky at tofurky.com. And as usual, that link is on the show notes page at veganbusinessmedia.com/podcasts. Now for our vegan business news roundup. The media has been all over the fact that Ben & Jerry's has launched a non-dairy vegan ice cream range. Vegans are divided on this. Some are delighted and can't wait to get their hands on it, while others have been quick to point out the importance of supporting all vegan ice cream companies who use no dairy in any of their products. And it's an interesting debate, and whatever your thoughts, the fact that a huge brand like this is introducing a vegan range is certainly notable. Now, on the subject of large brands, Hellmann's have launched what's effectively a vegan mayonnaise. Now, the funny thing about this is you might remember Unilever, which is Hellmann's parent company, very publicly sued Hampton Creek, makers of the vegan Just Mayo, because it insisted mayonnaise must have eggs. Now Hellmann's has announced its own eggless product, rather clunkily named Carefully Crafted Dressing and Sandwich Spread. I don't know who in marketing came up with that. It's a right mouthful and it's not exactly catchy. So it seems that Hellmann's have taken on the philosophy of if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. According to Metro newspaper in the UK, Hampton Creek see the move as a positive one in the aim to make plant-based foods more accessible to the masses. So good on Hampton Creek for being so gracious, and I think that really shows the difference between companies that are only in business for the money and for profit, and those that also have a greater mission and a bigger why. Now, this next story should surely be given an award for irony. Big Pork has lashed out at the newly launched Herbisaurus vegan butcher in the US, criticising the startup as, wait for it, unethical for daring to use the word butcher. Writing on the National Hog Farmer blog, editor Cheryl Day lambasted Herbisaurus' marketing as plain unethical and wrong on all levels. Wow. This had me laughing out loud when I found out about it. This is an industry that has at its very heart violence, abuse and killing of sentient smart animals. But yeah, a vegan business is the bad guy and unethical. Well, I guess the fact that this new vegan butcher has got a ton of media coverage means we've got the meat industry running scared. So yay for the vegan butcher. And finally, popular vegan restaurant chain Hip City Veg is coming to Washington in the US. The Philadelphia-based brand announced plans to open in the nation's capital early this year, reports the Washington Post. Vegan fast food is its speciality, and as well as the new location in Washington, Hip City Veg, that's such a great name, isn't it? I love it. Hip City Veg also plans to open a third eatery in Philadelphia. It's always lovely to see a vegan business expanding. So that's it for this episode of Vegan Business Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please consider giving it a review and rating on iTunes or any other platform that you're listening on. I'm Katrina Fox of veganbusinessmedia.com, and I look forward to catching up with you in the next episode. Bye for now.